right, Gordon Smith, we are back for another episode from one of your sessions at the Skift Aviation Forum. How are we feeling this morning, my friend? Are you feeling excited, energized?
This was one of my favorite sessions from our entire forum in Dallas-Fort Worth, and you're about to hear why. Because Joanna Geraghty, she is at the helm of one of the airlines in the U.S. industry right now that is not doing particularly well, and she's been tasked with turning this thing around. It's not easy. She's got an enormous task ahead of her, and this was an opportunity to really set the scene with 25 minutes or so one-on-one conversation, which is very, very rare to get an American airline CEO to speak candidly for that length of time. It was a real treat.
Well, what struck you the most about Joanna's tone in that moment? Because obviously, like you said, she has a lot of things compounding in the crisis mode of JetBlue. So what was the kind of like aha moment from the conversation?
For sure. I think as we were recording this, it was around December. I think it was December 3rd that the interview took place with Joanna in Fort Worth. She had just flown in that morning from Salt Lake City. Joe Patterson, the former JetBlue chairman, he had passed away. She was attending his wake. And, you know, obviously everything that goes around with that situation, compounded with the travel, compounded with them being one-on-one on stage. You know, I like to think I'm a nice enough guy, but still, it's going to be an interview. There's going to be some tough questions in there. She was really chill. And this bookended an interview that I had with Joanna at the Skift Global Forum in 2024. And she was explaining issues around air traffic control. She was discussing big picture topics that were really hitting JetBlue hard and providing some very, very strong headwinds for their recovery. So this was an opportunity to reflect on the earlier conversation that we'd had, but also build on some very, very short-term issues as well. So as we spoke in early December 2025, there was a serious incident involving a JetBlue aircraft. There was a software issue that led to the temporary grounding of many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of A320 aircraft, of which JetBlue operates worldwide. So that was huge. We had the US government shutdown. We had some very, very bad weather. On top of all the normal issues that you can imagine an airline CEO has to deal with day in, day out, never mind one that's struggling with profitability issues. So I thought, where on earth do we begin with all of this? Because there is just so much in her in tray, but actually her responses were measured. She wasn't trying to spin anything. She was very matter of fact about things, but not in a flippant way. And I think that comes through as our listeners shortly listen to this interview. She is measured in a way that I thought, you know what, there's a lot going on here, but she's in control.
She's in control.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, like you said, she literally flew in that morning on a competitor airline. And, you know, with all of this happening, all these issues, all the crises, you know, she still says she felt comfortable or felt better about the JetBlue product. So what is the real subtext here? And what should listeners listen to when she talks about product versus strategy? Because I think there's some key points that you guys got.
Absolutely. And it's very easy to get into the weeds here, Will, of the airline industry. But I think this transcends not just any travel company, any hospitality company. There are themes around product and strategy, which can be applied to any travel business. JetBlue sits in a reasonably uncomfortable middle position in the market. It's not a global mega carrier, even though you can fly with them to London and to Paris, but it's not a hyper low cost operator either. It's not a Spirit, it's not a Frontier, although they did try and merge. The middle ground is great in that you can try and attract the best of both, but being something to everyone is also really, really hard. And Joanna was hinting at that. And one of the big themes was this call for a level playing field, because if you've got a product that is middling, you know, it's got a very good premium product in its mint suites and so on, but it's also chasing some more price conscious passengers. If you're trying to grow when you are the underdog in a number of major markets, it's really, really tough. So the call from Joanna time and time again, both literally and sort of reading between the lines, was we need to have a major overhaul of just how we approach competitiveness in the US airline industry, because for everyone below the very, very large big four, that being American Airlines, United, Delta, and Southwest, it's really, really tough to gain scale. I countered this by saying, well, hang on a minute. you're the largest operator in Boston and a second largest operator at JFK. And she said, well, yes, but, and then she was able to defend it in some other ways. So yeah, she wasn't spicy, but she definitely wasn't going to be trampled all over with my data and everything else, which I sometimes like to throw at my interviewees. But you'll hear that shortly in the interview. But one of the big picture trends was just that underdog narrative and how maybe regulation and maybe how the more structural elements around the U.S. aviation industry need to change for competitiveness to thrive.
100%. Well, I love it. And as I was preparing for this discussion with you, listening to the interview that you had with Joanna, I love the counter, attack, right? Like it makes a good conversation. It makes a great conversation starter for people outside of the industry, people inside the room, as we're just coming off the Megatrends event here at Skift from London and New York, right? The aviation sector definitely has its spotlight, as tech is also getting a big spotlight. AI is getting a big spotlight. So lots of good talking points and counterpoints here. So for the listeners, stay tuned as we're about to play the session with Joanna Geraghty here on the Skift Take Sessions podcast.